Have you ever driven past an old cemetery at night and felt an inexplicable chill run down your spine? In our bustling modern world, do you ever wonder if there are still dark corners where ancient terrors lurk, waiting to breach the veil between their world and ours? Prepare yourselves, dear viewers, for a tale that will make you question the safety of even the most familiar places. The Haunting Beyond the Graveyard Gates. The beam of Zoe's flashlight cut through the darkness as she made her way through the towering iron gates of Evergreen Memorial Park. At 22, she was the youngest groundskeeper the historic cemetery had ever employed. The fading light of dusk cast long shadows across the mix of weathered headstones and newer granite monuments, creating an unsettling tableau of past and present. Zoe pulled her jacket tighter around her lithe frame, trying to ward off the unseasonable chill that always seemed to permeate the air here. She'd taken this job out of necessity, needing the steady income to pay off her student loans and support her ailing father. But in the 2 months since she'd started, she'd come to dread each shift with growing intensity. It wasn't the isolation that bothered her, nor the macabre nature of her surroundings. No, it was the unsettling feeling that in this place, the comforts of the modern world were nothing more than a flimsy barrier against forces far older and more sinister. As darkness fell in earnest, Zoe began her nightly rounds. The beam of her flashlight danced across polished granite and ornate statuary. She tried to focus on the mundane tasks at hand, checking for signs of trespassers, ensuring the gates were locked, anything to keep her mind from wandering to the things she'd seen, or thought she'd seen. A rustling sound from behind a nearby willow made her freeze. "Hello?" she called out, her voice embarrassingly shaky. "Is someone there? This is a restricted area." Silence answered her, broken only by the faint hum of distant traffic beyond the cemetery walls. Zoe shook her head, chastising herself for her paranoia. She turned to continue her patrol when a flicker of movement caught her eye. There, in the distance, a pale figure stood motionless between 2 crumbling headstones. Zoe blinked hard, certain her eyes were playing tricks on her, but when she looked again, the figure remained. Heart pounding, she took a tentative step forward. Excuse me," she stammered. "The cemetery's closed. You shouldn't be here. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The figure didn't move. As Zoe drew closer, dread pooling in the pit of her stomach, she realized with growing horror that she could see through the apparition. It was the spectral form of a young woman in a tattered wedding dress, her eyes dark hollows in a face as white as bone. Zoe stumbled backward, a scream caught in her throat. She fumbled for her phone, desperately trying to call for help, but the device had no signal, leaving her alone in the gathering darkness. The ghost's mouth opened in a silent wail, and suddenly the air around her erupted into chaos. Wisps of mist coalesced into more spirits, dozens, then hundreds of them. They swirled around her in a dizzying maelstrom of anguish and fury. Voices assaulted her mind, a cacophony of pleas and accusations. "Why have you disturbed our rest? Help us, please! You don't belong here, creature of flesh and blood!" Zoe ran, her lungs burning as she sprinted towards the cemetery gates. But no matter how fast she moved, the spirits kept pace, their ethereal fingers clawing at her clothes and skin. She burst through the gates, praying, that crossing the threshold would provide sanctuary. To her horror, the ghosts followed, pouring out onto the street beyond. Zoe watched in abject terror as cars swerved to avoid the spectral host, their drivers' eyes wide with disbelief and fear. Vehicles crashed into one another in a cacophony of screeching metal and shattering glass. "What have I done?" she whispered, realizing that in her panic she had unleashed something ancient and malevolent upon the unsuspecting world. The ghostly bride appeared before her once more, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "You've opened the way," her voice echoed in Zoe's mind. "Your presence has weakened the barriers, and now the dead shall walk among the living once more." Zoe sank to her knees, overwhelmed by the weight of her actions. As the spirits surged past her into the night, she knew that her life, and the lives of everyone in this quiet town, would never be the same. In the days that followed, reports of hauntings and unexplained phenomena flooded local news and social media. The boundary between the world of the living and the realm of the dead had been irrevocably breached, and Zoe knew it was all her fault. She returned to the graveyard each night, driven by a mixture of guilt and morbid fascination. The spirits recognized her now, whispering her name on the wind and leaving messages carved into tree bark and etched onto gravestones. "Join us, Zoe," they beckoned. "Cross over and be free of your mortal burdens." As weeks turned to months, Zoe felt herself changing. Her skin grew pale, her eyes sunken. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. The line between her waking life and her nightmares blurred until she could no longer tell which was real. One particularly cold autumn night, as a blood moon hung low and bloated in the sky, Zoe made her final journey to Evergreen Memorial Park. She walked past the now permanently open gates and made her way to the center of the graveyard. The ghostly bride waited for her there, surrounded by a host of spectral figures. She extended a translucent hand, her eyes boring into Zoe's very soul. "Are you ready, Zoe?" she asked, her voice a symphony of whispers. "Ready to take your place as keeper of the veil between worlds?" Zoe hesitated for just a moment before taking her hand. As their fingers intertwined, she felt a jolt of icy energy course through her body. Her last breath left her lungs in a misty cloud, and she felt herself begin to fade. In that final moment of transformation, Zoe understood the true nature of her role. She wasn't just a groundskeeper. She was a guardian of the boundary between life and death. And now, she would spend eternity ensuring that the gates between worlds remained closed, lest the horrors she had unleashed be allowed to roam free once more. As the sun rose on a new day, the people of the town noticed that the strange occurrences had ceased as suddenly as they had begun. Life slowly returned to normal, though a lingering unease remained. And in Evergreen Memorial Park, a new gravestone appeared overnight. Zoe Chen, 2002 to 2024, Keeper of Secrets, Guardian of Souls. Those who passed by in the light of day thought nothing of it. But on moonlit nights, when the mists rolled in and shadows danced between the tombstones, some swore they could see a young woman in a groundskeeper's uniform, patrolling the grounds with solemn determination. The veil had been mended, the dead laid to rest once more. But Zoe remained, eternally vigilant, knowing that the barrier between worlds was fragile, and that it would be her duty forevermore to keep the horrors at bay. So, dear viewers, the next time you drive past an old cemetery at night, look closely at the shadows between the graves, for you never know when you might catch a glimpse of Zoe, the spectral groundskeeper, standing guard at the threshold between life and death. And remember, Some gates are best left closed, some secrets best left buried. For once the dead begin to whisper, who knows what nightmares might answer their call. If this tale has sent shivers down your spine and left you craving more modern frights, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment below sharing your own eerie encounters, if you dare. And don't forget to turn on notifications, so you never miss our next journey into the heart of darkness. Until next time, sleep tight, and maybe avoid late-night walks near graveyards, just in case the spirits come calling.